Good afternoon, live on Toronto from Toronto on the GBKM network. This is the Chat Up Show, the show where we catch you up with the chat up of our weekly headlines. I'm your host, Elizabeth Eloidy, and you are watching the Chat Up Show. So we've been celebrating Black History Month all month, and it's been so exciting. Yes, I think it's my favorite time of year. I say it all the time because it's just amazing to have a time where we can collectively acknowledge the presence of Blackness in our society. And what better way than to talk about Black History Month than on a network that is Black owned. Now, of course, you know you can keep up with the GBKM network in various ways. You can continue to listen and watch live 24/7, not only during Black History Month, but always, okay? So you can listen and watch live again at www.gbkm.fm or www.gbkm.tv. You can also catch up on past shows you may have missed. Check out our upcoming show schedule and all of that good stuff. Also, make sure to download our Black-owned app. I'm going to do that all month, honestly, just as a reminder that we support who support us. We support who support our community, right? So download our free Black-owned app, available for all iOS and Android devices, where you can also listen and watch live 24/7. You can also catch up on past shows, check out our upcoming show schedule, like, share, comment, all of that good stuff. And the best part is you can take us on the go and you'll be notified every time we go live. Isn't that great? So awesome. If not, you can continue to watch us on Facebook and YouTube at GBKM Network, where of course you can continue to join in the conversation by liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. You can also follow us on Instagram and Twitter at GBKM Network to keep up with more of what's going on during Black History Month and beyond right here on GBKM. So it's Black History Month. Happy Black History Month. And as I said, it's my favorite time of year. I get so excited because we get to celebrate our Blackness in a different way. I mean, I'm celebrating my Blackness 365 and 366 on a leap year. But during Black History Month, it just feels like an extra added Black Excellence Fest, is how I see it, honestly. And even though there's so much history that we're still learning and, unearthing, if you will, regarding Black history and our Blackness in this world, it still feels good to take some time out of the year to just recognize the accomplishments we've had. We've all come so far and such a long way as a community, as in the diaspora of just Afro heritage, really. It's beautiful to watch and witness and to be a part of, but it can get tiring sometimes, and it can feel bleak, it can feel lonely in some instances and some occasions, when we feel as though everywhere we turn, we're constantly being reminded that our Blackness is somehow valued less in this world. And even amongst us, as we celebrate ourselves, there's still this somber feeling and this somber mood hanging in the air that we remember the history, the hardships, the adversity, the fight that so many of our ancestors have had to fight, and that we are even continuing to fight till this day, that have created and are part of our history with the celebration, of course, is also the other side that can sometimes be sad and can be a weight to carry. But, if we don't talk about it, we are doomed to continue repeating this history. And for so long, a lot of our Black history, not just US Black history, Canadian Black history, African Black history, since we need to specify as well, that has been so suppressed in a lot of our educational systems that we're not learning about our true history. We're not learning about the stories of the people that were real people, human beings that had to suffer through centuries and decades and years of just long suffering. I think it's easy for us to see, these images of leaders in the Black community, folks that have inspired so much change, that have inspired so many generations that come after them. But still remembering that at the end of the day, these people that we look up to, that we celebrate during Black History Months, the Martin Luther Kings, the Rose Parks, even the Cicely Tysons, our entertainment heroes as well. everyone that we celebrate, they're a human being and they have a story to share about just how much adversity they had to go through. And I think even though as raw as it can feel, it's important that we recognize the very real reality of the world that we live in, what it means for our Blackness, and what it also means for the history that we are being taught, the history that we're being told, and even the history that we're not being taught and told. And so today, I want to talk about why we should even be celebrating Black History Month. Now, this is a question that there are a lot of different angles, but usually it's an angle of, why do Black people even get a whole month to themselves? That seems a little reverse racism to me, because why is it only Black people that get a whole month to talk about their history? There's so much other history in the world that deserves, acknowledgement and a month of celebration and discussion and awareness. And fully 100% that there is a lot of history, and it's unfortunate that there's so much sadness that has plagued our earth in our history that, it's almost like we can never talk enough about these atrocities. It's like we don't have enough time to even acknowledge all of them, to let alone have a month of celebration. But then there's also the other hand where it's hard to celebrate when even during the month that we are celebrating, another cop has killed another Black man. Like on the second day of the month. And it's a sobering feeling let me do a disclaimer, because we're going to get real on this episode. I don't want this to just be another one where we're just talking about how sad it is. I want us to remember that at the end of the day, we are still human beings, and that things still do affect us, even though we try to maybe put up a front and act strong and say that it doesn't impact us, or we only choose to allow certain things to make a difference. There are certain things that we can only take so much, especially when it comes to institutional and systemic racism. We can only take so much, where in every place you step into, you are reminded that you are Black, that there's no area of this globe that, there are some parts, but still, even then, there's still so much remnants of the history of colonialism in so many parts of the globe that it's hard to kind of get away from just remembering the space we take up in the earth, remembering the history that we come from. But we do have to talk about it, because not talking about it has kind of allowed for this complacency, for this passivity towards certain topics, towards certain issues, that now we've gotten to a point where we're kind of bubbling over, and now it's a catalyst where folks are fed up and they don't care anymore. They want to go out into the streets and they want to protest because they want to let you know that we have voices and they're going to be heard. And if you were one of the people that said, I just don't know why people aren't peaceful or aren't finding more peaceful ways, if you've been trying the peaceful route and it's not working, you're going to think, okay, let me regroup and maybe try a new strategy. And so people are being a little more disruptive. And it's not like physically disrupting spaces, not always, in some instances, yes. Sometimes it's just in how we are talking about race. We're being more candid, we're being more open about it, because that's important. It can hurt, it can feel uncomfortable, but it's in that discomfort that we can really dig deeper and get to the real core truth about how a lot of us feel, is that it is uncomfortable. It is. We can admit that. Even as a Black woman, to sit here talking about that. Sometimes, I'm overcoming, as we speak, certain societal expectations as to how I should conduct conversations regarding my race as a Black woman, that I can acknowledge it, but not too much that it makes other people feel uncomfortable about their race. But honestly, what about me saying that I'm proud to be Black is so uncomfortable for you? Because it's not taking away from your pride. It's not taking away from anything that you're doing. And that's the same thing with Black History Month, that it's not trying to take away from other people's oppression. It's not trying to take away from the plight that other communities have had to deal with in this world. It's not taking away from it. It's simply saying, hey, this has happened, and we are still advocating till this day, for it to actually become the norm for us to talk about Black history. In Canada even. Because even when we think about Black History Month, a lot of the history is centered around United States, America, that part of Americas. We don't really talk about what's going on here in Canada. And don't worry, I'm going to get to it. Because I did say at the beginning of this month that every episode is going to give us some new Black history fact. Because I don't want us to leave this month without some new information about our history, something new that can really make it real, more real to us, make it seem like, okay, this wasn't like a fever dream that I dreamed up about a story that someone told me a long time ago, that this is really history. These things actually happened, and we need to talk about them so they remain documented, so that they don't disappear. Because oral history can only take us so much if we're only basing our history on things people have told each other. I mean, Chinese whispers, we've heard that game. It doesn't always get documented accurately. So we want to make sure that our history is documented in the most accurate way possible, but also just so that we're aware. That just even the basics, just to be aware of it. Not even like talking about what we can do with the knowledge of our history, just the awareness of our history. Just to acknowledge that it happened. If you think about it, that's the core of what a lot of, advocates are asking for, is just like awareness. And that feels like such a small ask. Honestly, in my opinion, after all of this history, that feels like such a small ask. Like, just be aware of the smidgen of just chaos that was caused for centuries. Off of what? Genuinely. Off of what? Ideas. They weren't even concrete. They weren't even always factual. They were just opinions and ideas that were passed down and shared around that people held as absolute truths. And then that's how we have stereotypes till this day, right? Started off as someone's idea, and then over time people just believed them to be true. And once you start believing something to be true, what they say, that the mind is so fallible that you can start seeing what you believe. And then we have the stereotypes that we see today. It's a lot of it is connected. That's why when people say not everything is about race, if you look at history, you will realize that a lot of it is about race. A lot of it. Zombies. It's totally random, but there's a point. Zombies in our pop culture, how we somehow have fallen in love with the idea of like a zombie apocalypse happening. Not fallen in love in the sense that it's like positive, that a lot of people genuinely fear or worry that this could happen because of how much it's been like such a big part of pop culture in like the last, I want to say at least in this millennium. But dating back to Haiti, actually, there were accounts of stories of zombies, and they say that a lot of it was out of fear of folks who were brought over to Haiti through slavery history. There you go. And that those who died, that they would come back and haunt, still be haunted by their enslavement, even in death. And so that was kind of like an idea of zombies, how that idea kind of found its way from Haiti and so slowly into pop culture, that basically through even in death, you could not find freedom, that you would still come back and continue to be enslaved. And it's such a bleak, like how do you hold on to hope with that kind of rhetoric being spread around? Like how do you hold on to hope? How do you hope that one day we'll finally break through? Like it's designed to break your spirit. And still till this day, things are happening that are designed to break one's spirit. The school to prison pipeline is a real thing. It's very real. Why is it that kids are being handcuffed in schools? That is the only way that folks see as the best way to deal with children, maybe acting up or misbehaving in some way, or seen as a disruption, that you want to call the cops on a kid and handcuff them. What, so the child gets comfortable in handcuffs? Like what kind of message is that sending? In a school where you're supposed to learn basically how to prepare yourself to function as an adult in society. In a school where you're supposed to learn how to grow up, basically. As much as we don't like to acknowledge how much work our teachers do, they do a lot, if we think about it. They play a pivotal role in society. I think this pandemic has shown us just a little bit of that. And so if this is an environment that our children are spending so much of their growing formative years in, and your way of dealing with disruption is to call the police and have a child handcuffed in front of their peers, the trauma in that alone could be scarring enough. But that's a different conversation. Celebrating Black History Month also puts into perspective just how long we've been fighting for the same thing. I'm going to put up an image right now that I think First of all, we're going to put it up. I'm going to give you a little time to look at it and see it, take it in for what it is. And then we're going to talk about where it's from, when it's from, and what it represents. So this image says, "We demand an end to police brutality now." Now, this is an archive from the Smithsonian Museum. And the year it is from is actually March 1963. 1963 is also the same year. In fact, it's a couple months before Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous "I Have a Dream" speech. In 2022, you could probably still see someone holding a poster like this now, literally, as I sit here speaking to you. From 1963, "We demand an end to police brutality now." To 2022, we're saying the same thing. Amir Locke, 22 years old, was fast asleep on a couch in a Minneapolis apartment last Wednesday when in the morning police barged inside and shot him and executed him. February 2nd, 2022. March 1963. Now, Minneapolis may sound familiar to a lot of you, and it is the same city that George Floyd was killed in. Just shy of under exactly 2 years to the day that he died, and even the day that Breonna Taylor was killed during a no-knock warrant. And why I bring that up is because the reason the police were able to barge into the apartment was because they had two warrants. One was a no-knock warrant and the other was a regular warrant. Now, Amir Locke was not named on any of these warrants, and yet he is no longer